Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. Well, Hunter Biden certainly isn't doing anything to save his father's legacy. You've seen, I'm guessing, clips of two long-form interviews he's done with Jamie Harrison, who's the former DNC chair, who has a podcast, and another podcaster who apparently interviewed him, and part of it was shown on a local D.C. station. Andrew Callahan, who was a guy who by all accounts, got in an RV and drove across country and interviewed people. So Hunter sat down with both of them, and he is an absolute mess. You look at the guy and you wonder, what are you thinking? I know why people are putting microphones in front of his face, because it is must-see TV. You cannot look away from these interviews because you're watching a very, very troubled person who used his father's name for his own personal benefit for years and years and years implode because, one, his dad is no longer in power, so he no longer has access to the great things that being the son of the president of the United States afforded him. And the cachet is a little bit less when you are a one-termer. And so obviously the money supply has also dried up. And because of the investigations and the convictions, he is a pardoned felon. It was harder for him to make money during his dad's presidency. It was really at the end of his vice presidential run and in the interim that, the 4 years in between Joe Biden's stint in the White House, that Hunter really, really enriched himself. And, that stream has dried up, and that has to lead to what we're seeing, which is this obvious just desperation. Here is this guy, and I said this on Outnumbered yesterday, that he looks like a wounded, caged or cornered rabid animal who is just reacting with this anger and the foment and just saying the F word over and over again, as though that either makes him tough or authoritative. It certainly makes him look unwell, because when you can't choose your words and every other word you choose is a curse word, it just goes to show that you are out of ideas. And he's also out of opportunities and clearly out of his mind. There were three takeaways that I had from watching what I have, which I'm guessing are the highlights or lowlights if you're Democrats, because they are kind of up in arms. There are a lot of people who have responded to the interview, everyone from Mark Penn, who was a longtime Clinton advisor and pollster. He's actually a pretty moderate Democrat. He's on Fox News a lot, and he's a sensible, logical person, and he just torched Hunter Biden and took him apart. You also had the Pod Saves America hosts responding in their own ways, and, which has been pretty funny because Hunter Biden said that they were a bunch of junior speechwriters. That was how he characterized them on Barack Obama's Senate staff. And they said that they just rode Obama's coattails, or they found a way of communicating effectively the ideas and ideals that they shared when they were in the White House with Obama and, of course, on his Senate staff. So that's how you do things if you are going to succeed in life, is when one chapter ends, you don't go scorched earth. You find a way of creating new avenues for yourself based on the visibility that you have, the skills that you possess that perhaps no one else does. And you realize that the only skill that Hunter Biden has is this desperation that has turned into a massive nuclear tantrum that makes him look like a very sick person who clearly needs some sort of treatment, psychological or otherwise. But it also, it does so much damage to his dad. So I don't know if he talked to his dad. He's like, Dad, I'm going to sit down and talk to some of these podcasters and set the record straight because you are amazing. And I'm going to let the world know that by saying the F word 750 times. And his dad's like, what? Yogurt? I think it's delicious. So who knows if Joe Biden is cogent at this point. And maybe the other thing that occurred to me with all of the fallout from this, maybe Joe Biden is doing a lot worse than everyone knows. And maybe Hunter Biden is dealing with this pre-death grief that people struggle with before their parents pass when they have been diagnosed with something as serious as the metastatic prostate cancer that Joe Biden is fighting right now. So, maybe his dad is not doing well, and this is his last gasp to try and set the record straight. But three things that it did for me. One, it shows the rift between the Bidens and the Obamas, because Hunter Biden took aim at Obama. He took aim at Obama's staffers. He took aim at George Clooney, and he tried to use Quentin Tarantino's insult of Clooney. And George Clooney is like, yeah, I don't care. And, like I said a couple weeks ago, it would have been better for Joe Biden and his legacy and his, historical reckoning to lose man-to-man to Trump instead of being forced out of the race and having the reins handed over to someone as incompetent as Kamala Harris. And part of that was George Clooney's doing, because he raised all this money for for Biden, knowing that if Biden had to step aside, the only person who could keep that money was Kamala Harris, because she was on the ticket already. And, you're raising money for the Biden-Harris ticket. If she's not the nominee, you have to give that money back to the donors and hope that they give it back in kind to whoever was running, which is what Obama wanted. But the Bidens, if Hunter is being used as a mouthpiece, clearly hate the Obamas. That was number one.
Don't go anywhere. More Kennedy Saves the World right after this.
Number two, talking about, his dad had the most successful administration in history, and, all metrics showed that his dad was incredibly effective and did a better job for the country than any other presidential steward we've ever had. But, were they not looking at the polling? Were they just trying to talk themselves into a historical presidential podium? It's like, well, we're clearly in third place behind, FDR and Reagan. I don't know what they're thinking, or Washington and Lincoln. And then it's Joe Biden, when, the country was saying, no, the country sucks and we need a different president in a different direction, and we don't trust you because you're a vegetable. So Hunter Biden was like, the debate was no big deal. That was only like one moment. That's only a blip. And his case was his dad had just flown around the world a bunch. And he said he's 81. He's really tired. And then, so if you're 81 and really tired, sleep comes pretty naturally. But then he said that they gave Joe Biden Ambien before the debate. And who knows if he had never taken it before. It was never on his list of prescriptions that his dumb doctor, Kevin O'Connor, released every year. Yeah, there were only 6 things on there. Ambien was not one of them. So if they'd never given him Ambien before, was this really the best time to experiment with Joe Biden's pharmaceuticals when he was already kind of teetering off a cliff? So he said that, his dad was too tired, too old, and so messed up on Ambien that this was Joe Biden during the debate. He just sat there with his mouth open. And you go back and it is so hard to watch. So I'm wondering what was harder to watch, this Hunter Biden interview or the Joe Biden debate? Yeah, the debate is much harder to watch. This is at least entertaining because this guy is digging himself such a hole. And please don't ever forget that, not only was he on the board of Burisma because daddy put him there, he also cheated on his wife with his brother's widow after his brother died. And then, and this is according to Jake Tapper, who literally wrote the book on it, got his sister-in-law, widow girlfriend, addicted to crack. So it's like they do have a problem with pharmaceuticals in the Biden family. But, it's like he didn't do his dad any favor. He did just a disastrous job of defending his father. It didn't look like defense, certainly didn't look like a well thought out one or a properly executed defense. what it looked like was a sad, codependent implosion. And, those two are clearly codependent on each other to their own detriment, because the reporting from Jake Tapper, once again, was that Hunter Biden was the Biden family chief of staff. And I think the implication there is not only, was he making, this guy, this F-bomb was making all the decisions for the family, but that also bled into political decisions because according to the reporting, and again, we've got 4 books on the subject now that are pretty thoroughly researched and recently published, that Hunter Biden was helping his dad make political decisions, and he was his most trusted political advisor. So if you do want to watch the interview, the most entertaining part, and this is the third big takeaway, was that Hunter Biden still loves crack. I'm not saying he's still smoking crack. Maybe it's like an unrequited love with him, because the way he speaks so effusively about the necessary ingredients and the way you make crack and how clean crack is and how it burns out all the impurities. And all you need is a little bit of baking soda and a little bit of water. And he's going through this whole thing, and he's telling Andrew Callahan he doesn't want to talk about it too much because he gets so euphoric talking about it. He gets so excited talking about crack. But that was the only time during the interview where he kind of calmed down. He reminded me a little bit of Carl the Greenskeeper from Caddyshack. And he's like, California Sensimilla and Kentucky Bluegrass. He loves crack. And, that is a love that may be the greatest love of his life that will never leave him. So if you want something entertaining, just try and find the clip of Hunter Biden talking about how to make and how to use crack and how it is so wonderful. I worry for the guy that after the interview, his brain was pretty scrambled before he sat down for the interview with Andrew Callahan. But then afterward, he did look a little jittery. So God bless him. I wish him well in his recovery. I wish him to go completely away. No one needs to see him. No one needs to talk to him. No one needs to put a microphone in front of his face. His family doesn't need it. The Democratic Party doesn't need it. There are so many loyalists to the Democrat establishment who have come out and just said, basically, this guy is a total loser. You don't have to listen to anything that he says. Unfortunately, what he says is so damaging and so deeply entertaining. Even though you don't want to see blood on the highway, it is the kind of car wreck that no one can turn away from. This has been Kennedy Saves the World. I'm Kennedy.
Listen ad-free with the Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.
Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.